Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Shafali Agarwal, and I am the founder and CEO of Ivy Groupe, which is a boutique MBA admissions consulting company. And before jumping in, I'd love to learn a little bit more about you. So maybe in the chat, if you can, maybe quickly just tell me where you're from, what round you're planning to apply in, what schools you're looking at. That would be really great just to see, what the audience looks like. So feel free to put that in the chat. And if there are any specific questions that you'd like me to address during the presentation, feel free to put that in the comments box as well. Don't be shy. Great. So I'll give maybe people a minute just to say maybe quickly, their name, where they're from, and maybe, the schools that they're looking at. So we have a post about how to improve the critical part. If you want to be a little bit more specific there, that would be helpful as I keep that in mind. Okay. But feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat as I start the presentation. So today we will be talking about 5 MBA application mistakes that can get you rejected. All right, so now I'm starting to see some responses here. So, people are looking at schools from UC Berkeley, USC, looking at the M7 deferred admissions. Great. So welcome to everybody. And before we get into the critical part of the presentation, which is, the 5 mistakes to avoid, let's start with an introduction about Ivy Groupe. So who are we? So Ivy Groupe is a boutique MBA admissions consulting company that provides personalized and customized services to clients all over the world who are applying to business school. So I'm seeing people from India, from West Africa. So this is really great. One of our core strengths is providing in-depth customer service. So we care very deeply about our clients, which is why they always come first. And our mission is to help clients tell their story to business schools so that they can achieve their dreams and impact the world in whatever field that they are in. So we really work with you to turn your story and your passions into your success. So our philosophy focuses very heavily on authenticity, storytelling, and the human element to really help clients craft compelling and differentiated applications that stand out. And as you can see from the bottom of this chart, we have helped clients gain admission to really most of, if not all of the world's top tier business schools, including Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, MIT, Kellogg, USC, US Berkeley, etc., just to name a few. We are a very collaborative and empathetic team. And so coaching, guiding, and mentoring others is our very ethos. And we feel very strongly about that one-on-one interaction and providing very, very deep and personalized attention to each and every client. So with that, I'd love to tell you a little bit more about me. So as I mentioned, my name is Shafali, and I am the founder and CEO of Ivy Groupe. I am a graduate of Harvard Business School and Princeton University. And I started my career in finance before going down more of an entrepreneurial path, which is why my rich and multifaceted career across industries and functions makes me extremely well suited to understand the varied backgrounds of candidates just like you. And I can tell already from the chat that we have very diverse candidates who are applying to business school. I spent most of my career as a finance professional on Wall Street, where I worked in both the investment banking and asset management industries at leading companies like JP Morgan. I also have experience working in the educational nonprofit sector and as an entrepreneur, founding an online media company. But I've always had a very strong passion for education and feel very lucky to have had the opportunities that I did, which really led me to launching Ivy Groupe and to where I am today. I have spent over a decade successfully coaching MBA applicants globally to the MBA programs of their choice, and have been recognized as a top MBA consultant by both Poets and Quants and Business Insider. Most recently recognized as a top 4 MBA admissions consultant by Poets and Quants. So top 4 MBA admissions consultant of 2022, which was a very strong honor for me, and was humble to have gotten a perfect 10 net promoter score from all of my clients who had written reviews. So before starting Ivy Groupe, I was Executive Vice President of Business Development and Strategy, and I've also taken on senior MBA admissions consultant roles at other admissions companies. So I have a lot of experience in this space. At Harvard Business School, I also had the unique opportunity to gain perspective on what the top business schools are looking for in candidates when I served as VP admissions of the Women's Student Association. And so in that role, I collaborated directly with the HBS admissions office as a bridge between current students and prospective and admitted students. I've also had the opportunity to be a featured speaker on the QS World MBA Tour, and of course have led multiple webinars on GMAT Club, as well as been quoted as an expert in US News, Business Insider, Fortune, and as well as written articles for Forbes, Entrepreneur, and the Muse. I'm also a member of the Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants. So I'm really excited today to have the opportunity to share the knowledge that I have gained doing this for over a decade to help you avoid mistakes so that you can put your best foot forward when you apply to business school. So with that backdrop, let's just talk briefly about the competitive MBA landscape. So as this chart shows, the MBA landscape has never been more competitive, with the top 2 MBA programs, Stanford and Harvard, having acceptance rates of 6% and 11% respectively. And if you look at the top 7 schools, or the M7, as they are called, they have acceptance rates ranging from 6% to 24%. So since this process is so competitive, it is extremely important to put your best foot forward when you are applying to business school. And part of that, and we are going to get into this as well, part of that is crafting authentic, compelling, and differentiated applications. So given the low odds when it comes to gaining admission to a top business school, what are the things that you can do and be aware of to make sure that you are putting your best foot forward, not making any mistakes, and really not leaving anything to chance throughout this process? Because it is so competitive. I always tell my clients that when they hit that submit button on their applications, they should have no regrets at all. So through this presentation, I hope that you'll walk away with some of those takeaways. So with that, let's jump into the 5 MBA application mistakes that people make. All right. And again, if you have any questions, you can feel free to put it in the chat. There will also be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So let's look at mistake number 1. Not spending sufficient time on school research. So when applying to MBA programs, it is imperative to take the time to get to know the schools. Through the applications, through the essays, through the interview, admissions committees will want to understand why you are interested in attending their school, how you will contribute, and why you are a good fit. And when thinking about your answers, it's important to be as specific as possible. There really is no cookie cutter approach to these questions because it really is customized to you and your goals and what you're trying to get out of the experience. So to help you think about school research, here are some things that you should ask yourself when you are doing school research. What does the curriculum look like? How are the classes taught? How will a particular school's programs help you to achieve your post-MBA goals? What is the culture like? What are some extracurricular activities or clubs that you see yourself getting involved in? How will you contribute? And so here are 5 ways for you to go about interacting with the schools to learn more about them and to show your interest. And what I want to stress here is that you don't necessarily have to do every single one of these, although many of you will. The most important thing is to engage with the schools in some of these ways to learn more and to show your interest as you delve into the application process. So first off, and this may seem very obvious, but I'm always amazed at, people not even taking the time to go through a school's website, right? The website is the first place to start to go through, not only to look at what their application requirements are, but also what are the different aspects or the different things that they offer students. So the website is the first place to really go to start to crystallize your thoughts about each school. The next way to start to really learn about schools is either through on-campus visits. So the nice thing is that schools are starting to open up a little bit now. So on-campus visits are increasingly becoming more of a possibility after we've sort of had a couple of years of no travel, etc. But on-campus visits are great, but if you can't visit in person, virtual school visits are also really, really helpful. And admissions officers are increasingly saying that the hybrid sort of model is here to stay, where there's going to be more virtual options for people to participate in, as well as on-campus opportunities. So there are virtual school visits or on-campus visits. And for on-campus visits, just one thing to keep in mind is that often info sessions, et cetera, need to be booked in advance. So the trips should be planned accordingly, because the last thing you would want to do is go to a school and realize that everything is booked. The best times to visit are typically in the fall or the spring when students are on campus so that you can interact with them and maybe even attend some activities. So for instance, attending conferences. But during the visits, you should, be yourself, learn as much as you can about the school and the culture, and just be really enthusiastic and authentic. You don't have to be someone who you're not. So definitely avail of those opportunities. There are also local information sessions or virtual MBA conferences. So if you live in a major city, and again, this is also starting to open up with the sort of the global tours with the MBA tour, the QS World MBA Tour, etc. So the MBA tours are also a great way to meet admissions officers and learn about the schools. During these events, admissions officers may give presentations, they might participate in panels, they might even offer one-on-one meetings with prospective students. So you should bring your resume and be prepared to ask questions. Along these lines, there are also sometimes one-off info sessions and webinars that schools offer, and sometimes they're very specific by topic. So they may have topics focused on women in MBAs, or they might have topics focused on, veterans who are applying to get an MBA. So you can see what interests you and participate in those sessions. And then, of course, speaking with students and alums. So this is really an excellent way to learn about schools. So these can be, family members, friends, colleagues, students you meet on campus. And often such conversations really provide unique insight into a school that can be mentioned in essays and interviews. And so if there is, for instance, a club that you're interested in or a topic that you're interested in, reach out to the officers of those clubs and see if you can schedule 10 to 15 minutes to chat with them. Often they're really open to you doing that. So look at these different ways of researching schools and start doing it today. This is really more of a marathon, not a sprint. And as you do the school research, really keep an eye towards demonstrating fit. Why are these schools, as you learn more about it, the best place for you? Because that fit needs to start coming through in your application materials. So that is mistake number one, not spending sufficient time on school research. So now let's talk about mistake number two. And I alluded to this at the beginning of the presentation, but mistake number two is not focusing on authenticity and your unique attributes. So the questions that I often get from candidates are the following. How do I get into a top business school? What can I do to stand out from the competition? Is there a formula that will help me get accepted into an MBA program of my choice? My friend or colleague got into, Harvard or Stanford by focusing on XYZ in his or her app. Should I do the same thing? And I understand where these questions are coming from. Of course, everyone wants an edge in the business school application process. But the best way to really shine in the pool of very qualified candidates is by being yourself. And this is why I love this quote by Oscar Wilde: be yourself, everyone else is already taken. So how do you be yourself? And what does it mean to be authentic? Here are three things that I put a lot of emphasis on when it comes to showing your authenticity. So the first is drawing upon your own unique experiences and perspective. And again, just looking at, the audience today, I can already see that there are very diverse perspectives and experiences. So what you have experienced throughout your life, in school, personally, at the workplace, is what makes you you. There's no other single person in this world who has walked in your shoes, who has had your exact experiences, and who has seen the world from your eyes. And so what may have helped a friend or a colleague gain admission to a business school will most likely not work for you. So think about the experiences that have shaped you into the person you are today, and jot it down. And again, this takes time. It's not something that you can do in one sitting. Things will pop up in your mind when you least expect it. But think about what makes you unique and that have shaped you, and also talk to people who are close to you and get their thoughts so that you can capture the full picture. And are there common themes, as you look at these stories, are there common themes that start to emerge from them? Remember that admissions committees want to understand the living person beyond the two-dimensional application. Now, another facet of this is talking about the why. Business school applications are really more about the why than the what. So anyone can talk about his or her experiences and accomplishments. But what really will set an application apart is providing color on why something has been instrumental in shaping you or why something means so much to you. And this interpretation, so for instance, it can be the impact that you've had. It can be the obstacles that you have overcome. It can be the lessons that you have learned. Um, all of this is what makes you unique. So your diverse insights will really help you to be a meaningful contributor to your class. And remember, business school is not just about the academics. The academics are really important, but it's also about what you will bring to campus and into your class and to the broader community. So that is why it is really, really important that the why comes through in your applications. The third area is to convey your voice. Now, business school essays are meant to be formal pieces of work, but that doesn't mean your personality and your voice can't come through. And so if you have a certain style of writing, don't be afraid to let that shine and come through. And although you may get feedback from family members, you may get feedback from friends, and yes, even MBA admissions consultants, um, it is extremely important that you make the ultimate call when it comes to your essays, since that represents you, your accomplishments, your perspective, and your values. And so there is a question here on how do you merge your authenticity with particular requirements of business schools? And it really is that sweet spot. It really is merging the two. So looking at what really makes you unique, what are the aspects or the qualities that that business school values, and combining the two. It's not going to be a perfect science, and again, this process is more of an art than it is a science, but it's emphasizing those aspects of you that are very unique and that will appeal to that business school depending on what they value. And it's finding that sweet spot in that intersection. Okay. So now let's move on to mistake number 3. Having generic post-MBA goals. So almost all of the top tier business schools will want you to state your post-MBA career goals, both in the short term and in the long term, as well as how, and this goes back to our first mistake, the research, but they also will want to know how that particular program will help you to attain those goals. So many times I see candidates not putting enough thought into their post-MBA goals and how their prior experiences have prepared them to achieve them. And so this results in post-MBA goals that are unclear or too broad, which can hurt a candidate's chances of admission. So what constitutes strong post-MBA career goals? So in short, post-MBA career goals are specific, credible, and achievable. And before I sort of get into this this part here, I am seeing one question about what to study in college. And I think it's great that, Sujal, you're already in high school and you're thinking about business school. There is no right or wrong answer in terms of what you study. You should always study what you're most passionate about, and connect the dots in your story as you look ahead. And so if you are very early stage, you have that luxury of being able to connect the dots looking forward. But if you are a young professional or planning to apply soon, you can still go back and think about why you made each decision and connect the dots there. So now let's look at what constitutes strong post-MBA career goals. So first off, your goals should be specific. So candidates are often hesitant to be specific in their post-MBA goals since they are unsure of what they really want to do after business school. And so they're concerned about being locked into what they write about, or what they state. Now, be rest assured that once you are in business school, you can change your goals. No one is going to hold you to them. However, for business school purposes, you should be able to state post MBA goals that you plan to follow at this point in time and that you are very passionate about pursuing. So that passion, that genuineness, that authenticity related to those goals still needs to come through. But should you go to business school and come across something else that has shifts your interest, that is okay. But for the business school application, make sure to have specific goals. So specific goals will definitely stand out a lot more than goals that are too broad. So for instance, instead of saying that you are interested in pursuing a career in healthcare, which is very broad, it's better to say that you want to lead strategy at a medical device company, which is much easier to visualize and is much more tangible. Now, the second aspect of your post-MBA goal is that it should be credible, which means that they should build upon what you have done in the past. Now, significant career switches can often come across as unattainable, mainly because you don't have any prior experience in order to achieve it. So, as an example, let's just say you are working in investment banking with a focus on retail companies and you want to switch to the field of healthcare after graduating from business school. That's going to be a really tough sell to admissions committees because you have a background in retail and finance. But if instead you say you want to work in corporate development within a retail company, that is much more believable because you would have had experience already analyzing retail companies as an investment banker. So really make sure again that you can connect the dots in your story. Now, your goals should also be achievable. So admissions committees want to see that you have what it takes to accomplish your goals. So a lot of this really boils down to the qualities that you currently possess and that you've displayed in the past in order to succeed in your prior endeavors. So always keep in mind that admissions committees assess your past achievements, both professional and extracurricular, as indicators of your success in the future, including your ability to achieve your post-MBA goals. So it is very important to demonstrate your qualities throughout the application. So the resume, essays, recommendation letters, data forms, etc. And as you think about your, crafting your post-MBA goals that are specific, credible, and achievable, also think about what is motivating you to pursue them. So your post-MBA goals are an extremely important part of the business school application. So I'm going to pause here a little bit to answer a couple of questions that have popped up in the chat, and then we'll go on with mistake number 4. But the question is the GRE with the high score not a problem? It is not a problem. Schools are indifferent, even the top business schools, between the GRE and the GMAT. You are better off taking the exam that you can do better on. I've worked with many candidates who have taken the GRE, done very well, and been admitted to the top business schools. Now, with respect to tips for dual degree applications, it's really not going to be any different, but from what I'm stating here. But it is important to be able to convey why both degrees are important for you as you think about your goals. That's going to be critical. Why is not just having one degree sufficient? Why do you need both? So now let's move on to mistake number 4. Waiting until the last minute to write your essays. Now, business school essays are an opportunity for candidates to share aspects of themselves with the MBA admissions committee in order to provide a more holistic picture of who they are. But many candidates are daunted by the prospect of writing essays for business school apps, which is why they often procrastinate and wait until the last minute. This is a huge mistake. And the reason it is a mistake is because the essay writing process is a very iterative process. I don't think I've ever met one candidate who has nailed it on the first go. Plus, you're also under a lot of pressure when you're trying to write essays in a very short time frame. You should start now, especially if you're looking at round one. And as you think about the process, I just want to go through the process I utilize with my own clients to make this more enjoyable. And writing essays can be a very enjoyable part of the process. It doesn't have to be that daunting. So first off, make sure that you read the question. Make sure you clearly understand the question that is being asked. Read the question, reread it again, and then reread it yet again. Too many times I have seen candidates respond to a question without actually addressing what the question is asking. And so as you read the question multiple times, think about how you would go about answering it. And just jot down some high-level thoughts. You don't need to worry about grammar and word choice. It's just more brainstorming at this point. So think about, what will you try to convey in the essay, and how will it fit in within the context of the entire application? And how will you structure the essay? Now, once you've done that, take those thoughts and start to put it into an outline. So this will really help you to crystallize your thought process. A lot of candidates will skip this step and jump right into writing the essays. But that often, and some people may get away with it, but for the most part, that often results in an essay that lacks clarity and focus, as there's no clear roadmap and no clear purpose with respect to what the end result should be. So the outline will really help you pinpoint the content that should be included in the essay, as well as ensure that the structure is resulting in an essay that will flow smoothly. And again, it doesn't have to be a perfect piece of work. Approach the outline as a guide that will really help you to stay on track as you begin to actually write the essay. It's your roadmap. Now, once you have your outline, start writing the essay. Follow the outline from the prior step as you formulate your responses to the essay prompt. And now writing the essay should hopefully be more of a seamless and fun process, because you know what the content is going to be and how the essay will be structured. And again, I'm going to stress that while the essay is a formal piece of work, it should express your unique voice. Think about, what is going to make your, think about who you are and what makes you authentic to help you stand out from the rest of the crowd. And then finally, revise your essay. Again, the essay writing process is very iterative, so don't expect to get it in the first go. Once you've taken a stab at writing the first draft, take a step back and come back to it with a fresh set of eyes. If you are planning to seek feedback from others, I strongly suggest that you try to do this earlier in the process rather than later, so you can incorporate any thoughts at the outset. And everyone's going to have his or her 2 cents. So it's easier to incorporate that earlier when your essay is more malleable. And also keep in mind that you don't have to agree with all the feedback that others provide. These are your essays and you make the ultimate decisions. These essays have to be a representation of you and your work. So it is very iterative, but as you go through this process and you start to do it, it's going to become second nature. That first application is going to be a little tougher, but it will get easier as you work from one application to the next. Now, I have a couple of questions here around sort of the timeline. First off, 2 months is enough to start writing the essays, but you have to be very, very systematic in terms of blocking off time, making sure you have a sort of calendar or timeline, and making sure you stick to it, especially if you are applying to multiple top schools. For the general timeline, you really should be using June to start, outlining your strategy, start outlining your essays. Schools are starting to release essay questions. So there's been a trickle of schools releasing, I know Harvard has, Columbia has. So schools are starting to release it. So come sort of, the second half of June into July, And really, kind of July, August, early September, that is really going to be the heart of when you are going to write the essays. You're going to be working on your recommendation letters, short answers, etc. So that should roughly give you a timeline, but I would suggest taking some time to focus on your strategy first and the outlining before you actually start writing the essays. So here on the next slide, I want to show you some representative prompts to think about. Now, I do want to caveat and say these are last year's questions, but these are really good ones. And I wouldn't be surprised if the questions are still very similar or along these lines, either for the same schools or even for different schools. So these are themes or questions that tend to arise a lot. So as we look at just thematically, and again, these are last year's questions, but questions around why the MBA, right? So how do you plan to use the Wharton MBA program to help you achieve your future professional goals? So usually there will be questions around your professional goals, why the MBA, and schools will ask you to think about your past experiences to connect the dots. As another representative example, here's a great one from Kellogg. Values are what guide you in your life and work. What values are important to you and how have they influenced you? So think about your values, and this is where the strategy phase can be very helpful. Stanford has also always had a question, what matters most to you and why? And that can also sort of fall into this category of values. INSEAD has historically had a really interesting question about times when you failed, times when you have succeeded, what are your achievements? So these are just some representative questions to start to think about as you kind of high level think about essay questions during the strategy phase. And then, of course, once you're ready to dig into the actual essay questions, getting into those specifics. So now let's talk about mistake number 5. Choosing recommenders based on title. So this happens quite a bit where people feel that they need to choose a recommender who is very senior in the firm. So as an overview, recommenders play an extremely important role in supporting your candidacy. By pointing to your qualities, achievements, and areas of development, they can add more color, they can add more breadth and depth to the picture that you are painting of yourself throughout the application. So whom should you choose as your recommenders, right? And this is really the question. Practically every business school requires 2 rec letters, although some will require 1. And usually that one, or at least one, should come from a current direct supervisor. So as you think about which recommenders to choose, there are 3 things to keep in mind. 1, your recommenders should know you well. So does title matter? And the short answer is no. It is much more important that your recommenders have supervised you in some capacity. So yes, they should have supervised you in some capacity, but they should have worked directly with you, and they should be able to comment on your work and the qualities that they've seen with you through the interactions they've had. So in other words, they should know you really, really well. So having the CEO of your company or a well-known managing director write your recommendation letter can actually backfire if they have not directly supervised you or if they don't know you well. It can sometimes be better to go with a vice president, for instance, or if you're an analyst, even an associate. So think about how well your recommenders know you. Your recommender should also believe you are one of the best. So given how competitive the business school admission process is, you should choose recommenders whom you have the confidence will say that you are one of the best that they have worked with. Many schools will ask recommenders to rate candidates against their peers in the workplace. And so needless to say, you want to be ranked very, very highly on that scale. You really want the strongest advocates supporting you. Don't leave anything up to chance. Now, for the schools that ask for 2 recommendation letters, you want to make sure that the recommenders complement one another so that when viewed together, they provide a holistic picture of your qualities. If both of your recommenders focus on all of the exact same qualities, that is actually a lost opportunity to provide the admissions committee with a broader perspective of who you are. So make sure that everything in your application, including the recommendation letters, is holistic. So with the right recommenders on your side, shedding important light on your candidacy, you will be able to submit your strongest applications. And don't, again, feel that you have to go to somebody who is super senior. If that super senior person knows you extremely well, has worked very closely with you, that's absolutely fine. But if they haven't, you're better off choosing somebody who knows you much better and may have a title that's a little bit less senior. Now, there's a question here, going back to the, sort of essays. Do schools expect candidates to get personal in their essays? You can, and it really just depends on the essay prompt. So you just have to make sure you're looking at the specific prompt and seeing how that fits into the entire context. But in general, yes, you can get personal in your essays. And when you go, think about values, questions, etc., a lot of that is derived from your own personal experiences. All right. So now, as a quick recap, here are 5 mistakes to avoid when applying to business school and to make sure or to minimize your chances of getting rejected. So mistake number 1, not spending sufficient time on school research. Mistake number 2, not focusing on authenticity and your unique attributes. Mistake number 3, having generic post-MBA goals. Mistake number 4, waiting until the last minute to write your essays. And mistake number 5, not choosing the right recommenders, such as choosing recommenders based on title. So now, what I'd love to do is tell you a little bit more about Ivy Groupe and why many clients end up partnering with us. So we are a boutique MBA admissions consulting company. And so you are always at the center of what we do. Our passion is really helping you to tell your story. And as I've mentioned many times, the business school application is more of an art than it is a science, and it requires a very empathetic team. We really use a no stone left unturned approach. And because of our love of the written and spoken word, we're really able to elicit the very best from you. We also have an advisory board comprised of professionals who have attended the top business schools, and they're always there for our consultants as a sounding board. So collectively, myself and my advisory board were accepted to or received invitations to many, many business schools as shown here, including Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, Kellogg, Columbia, Booth, etc. We also use a very highly customized approach when working with you. We have a very collaborative process. And we engage in an interactive dialogue with you to craft the most authentic and compelling applications. And I think that's why, I just feel very fortunate that my clients have felt that they've gotten exceptional service working with us and have given us, all 10s. I'm actually only one of, 5 consultants with all perfect 10s across the board, on the POTS and Quants list as a top MBA consultant of 2022. And we also offer multiple services. So both comprehensive packages, which is end-to-end help, and hourly services. So feel free to visit our website at www.ivygroupe.com. There is an E at the end of group if you are interested in exploring further. I also want to just, make you aware of other resources. So you can feel free to sign up for our emails on the website for tips and updates, to stay ahead of the competition. You'll also receive our free guide on the top 6 mistakes to avoid when applying to business school. You can feel free to visit our website as well to read blogs and watch other webinars about different topics related to the MBA application process. You can visit our products page. So we have a guide, for instance, on how to bolster your profile, especially if you are a pre-MBA candidate. What can you do in the coming months and years to really solidify your candidacy? So there's a workbook there And feel free to follow us on social media. We are on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And with that, I'd love to open it up for questions. And I see one so already here, and of course, happy to answer more. But do recommend or send letters directly to the schools. So what the way the process works is the applications will ask you to put in the email addresses of your recommenders. Once you put in the email address, then they will get a link in their inbox, and it's through that link that your recommenders will submit the recommendation letter. So you should not be submitting any letters on their behalf. They will get a link through the email address that you put in to the application, and then through that link, they can go in and upload their letter. So question about applying in round 2 versus round 1 for schools like Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton. So in general, you should apply when you can feel, or when you feel you can put your best foot forward. That is always the most important determinant. Now, all else being equal, so assuming that your profile will be as strong in round 1 as it will be in round 2, round 1 tends to be a little bit better, only because all the spots are open in round 1. And this is especially true for schools like Stanford, which have a smaller class size. Harvard and Wharton both have bigger class sizes, so there's not too much difference between Harvard and Wharton. But even as we look at Stanford, always apply when you feel you can put your best foot forward. So if you feel that applying in round 2 will help you put together a stronger application, then it is better to take those couple of months, put together a stronger application in round 2 instead of a subpar application in round 1. So hopefully that answers your question in terms of round 1 versus round 2. So always put your best foot forward, apply in that round. All else being equal, yes, round 1 tends to be the best, only because all the rounds are open. All right. So have I advised a male East Asian in private equity before? What are the main challenges for such profiles? Yes, I have advised many people in private equity, both in Asia, the US, Canada, etc. Just given my own background, having worked in investment banking and investment management. The main challenges for that profile is just coming across as very cookie cutter. And the way to really get beyond that is to think beyond who you are as a professional. So again, and I sound like a broken record, the application process is more of an art than it is a science. And so think about what makes you very unique. The work you do is going to be critical, of course. After all, this is a professional graduate degree, but also think about who you are beyond that. What is your story beyond that? And that's going to be important as you start to craft your story. So question on my opinion on putting in an additional essay to address lower GPA, etc. That is always a good idea to explain it. You don't want AdCom to assume anything. It is much better to be transparent, show that self-awareness. No one is perfect. I've worked with many candidates who've had lower GPAs, and it's just addressing it. So I would suggest addressing it and talking about what you have done to address it, to give schools that, comfort that you can handle the rigor of the curriculum. So you're a deferred enrollment applicant who got an interview at Wharton but was denied admission. You'll have 3 years of work experience in 2024. So the fact that you got the interview is fantastic. So that obviously you possess the characteristics that the school is looking for. Don't feel discouraged. The deferred applicant pool is a tough one. And many people are denied admission from the deferred pool, but admitted when they apply as a young professional a few years later. So it's, it's always tough to know why someone was given a rejection. But in terms of the mistakes to avoid, I would just really think about what I stated in this presentation. It's not going to be any different as a deferred enrollment, sort of as a deferred candidate versus applying in the next few years. I would suggest that you take some time to go through your application. Maybe jot down a few things that you think maybe didn't go as well. And again, oftentimes it's just the pool. Maybe there was someone else who had a similar background, who just did one extra thing than you did. So it's always tough to say why someone may have been rejected. But in terms of the mistakes to avoid, I would just, keep the mistakes in mind that we spoke about today. And it certainly sounds like you are on the right track here, given that you already got the interview. So I would just continue to do what you're doing as you continue to bolster your profile in the coming years. All right. So does a work experience of 10 years limit your chances? It gets harder when you are older. It's not impossible. And just to give you perspective, I worked with a candidate a few years ago in her early 30s who was accepted to Stanford. So she was an older candidate. So it's not impossible. But the most important thing is to be able to explain why you need an MBA at this point in time. Now, that question is important for everyone to answer, but it's even more so for those who have more experience and less experience. So admissions committees will just want to understand, why is getting the 2-year MBA in particular so important for you at this stage in your career? Why can't you not continue to do what you're doing? Or why is a 1-year MBA or an EMBA or, the mid-career programs not going to be sufficient for you? So conveying that is going to be important as part of that process. And so to the question about, work experience of 6 or above, you are correct. Europe tends to skew a little bit older. US, the sweet spot is around 4 to 5 years. It's something to consider. Again, it's always a bell curve. So there will always be people on the older side, people on the younger side. You just need to be able to convey why now is the best time for you to be able to or to pursue an MBA. Why is now the best time? So Hazel, you're in a rotational analyst program. You only have managers for 6 months each. That's tough to answer at this stage. It's too early. But I would definitely, keep them in mind, as you've worked with those rotational or work during those rotations, who are the recommenders who you develop strong relationships with? I think they can definitely be in your pool of recommenders to consider once you get to that point. But of course, who you exactly go with would have to sort of be determined at that point in time. But they can definitely be considerations as you think about the process. Okay. Any last questions before we wrap up? All right, but it has been a pleasure to, share my insights with you today, and I hope this has been helpful for you. But thank you again for joining me today. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And just keep on doing what you are doing, and I'm sure you will have success. But best of luck and enjoy your day.